Okay, hi guys. I hope you did the first part. This is the second part. Let's start immediately so that this thing doesn't time out on us. Let's go to Acts chapter 21. We have looked at Acts chapter 15 and we've seen where Paul and Barnabas went to inquire of the apostles what was required of the Jews. And they gave a few requirements there, but ultimately, salvation, as Peter mentioned, is by faith alone. So now in chapter 21, we have Paul going back to Jerusalem. He was really keen on going despite many warnings from the brethren who were out there away from Jerusalem, who he had preached to and brought to Christ. He was really adamant he needed to go back to Jerusalem at that time, and of course he was going to go there and get arrested. So when Paul arrives, he goes with his companions to see James, because it says that he went to see the council. Let's go to verse 17. And when we were come to Jerusalem, the brethren received us gladly. And the day following, Paul went in with us unto James, and all the elders were present. Okay, so again, let me reiterate that James is the head of the church at this point. However, whichever way he has become the head of the church, he is the head of the church. And when you go to Jerusalem, when you go to see the elders council, when you go to the church, you actually have gone to James. James is the one who's heading it. How that happened, God knows. Anyway, when he had saluted them, he declared particularly what things God had wrought among the Gentiles by his ministry. Now, just be keen here, because this is where the point is. And when they heard it, they glorified the Lord and said unto him, Thou seest, brother, how many thousands of Jews there are which believe, and they are all zealous of the law. Have you noticed that addition there? This one, in fact, instead of this semicolon, you can just put plus. No? They believe and are zealous of the law. That's an addition, okay? Believe and the law. That is what the Jews in Jerusalem, the church in Jerusalem, was teaching. And they are informed of thee, that thou teachest all the Jews which are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, saying that they ought not to circumcise their children, neither to walk after the customs. They actually rebuking Paul. Paul has been out saying that it is not by law, it is by grace that you are saved through faith in Christ Jesus. But these guys are first showing him that it is the Jews in Jerusalem believe and they are zealous of the law. And the Jews in Jerusalem know that Paul has been out there teaching the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses and the customs. So then they give him a piece of advice. What is it thereof? Therefore, the multitudes must needs come together. They will actually come together to riot because of your presence, for they will hear that thou art come. And do therefore this that we say to thee. We have 4 men which have a vow on them. Them take and purify thyself with them, and be at charges with them, that they may shave their heads, and all may know that those things whereof they were informed concerning thee are nothing. Listen very keenly. They tell Paul to purify himself, and they say, and all may know that those things whereof they were informed concerning thee are nothing, but that thou thyself also walkest orderly and keepest the law. These guys, in short, this is a lot of King James English. What they're actually saying in short is, purify yourself, do this Jewish ritual of cleansing, so that these people will see that everything they have been hearing about you is false, that you are not actually teaching the Jews not to keep the law or their customs, and that you yourself are a good law-abiding Jew. That is what they're telling Paul to do. Remember, this is the head of the church. This is the council in Jerusalem. These are the guys who were consulted when there were issues on what Gentiles were expected to do. They are the guys heading the church in Jerusalem. Do you know how sad it is? That these are the people who were entrusted by the Lord with the gospel, and this is what they're doing. Of course, I don't want to say that the apostles were together in this, because Peter, from verse 15, we understood that what he said, he was clearly not holding the same view as James, but James had the final say. So anyhow, and then they go on to say, yeah, but of course about the Gentiles, they already said that what they need to do is maybe don't offer food, don't eat food offered to idols, don't eat anything strangled, don't drink blood, don't fornicate. Of course, those are obvious things. Of course, these are still from among them. It's not that they have actually consulted the Lord and the Lord said, tell the Gentiles to do these things. We obviously know sexual immorality and such things, yeah? Those are not good things. Worshipping idols and eating food offered to idols, blah, blah, blah. But you know, the interesting thing is that these are still the things which are put out there to yoke believers, because let me tell you, among the Maasai community in East Africa, one of the things they do is to bleed the animals, yeah? And it's actually just one of their cultural practices. So I don't know how you're going to go there and and evangelize to them and tell them that you wicked men, you will never see heaven because of 1, 2, 3. You know, and I think Jesus gave us an example when he went, and first of all, he mingled with the people. Not that he sinned together with them, but he mingled with them and showed them that the kingdom of heaven was actually theirs. All they needed to do was believe. So these are still additions which do not come from the Lord. Strangled animals. In my country, that's how people slaughter poultry. It's the easiest way. They twist the neck, 1, 2. And anyway, not to be too graphic on this, but let me just say, anyhow, that was not the point I was bringing. I wanted to bring the point of they were advising Paul to deceive the Jews there so that he could save himself, and to pretend to be a law-abiding Jew through all these purification rituals and all that. So this is a church, this is a council headed by James. So I just want you to keep remembering that James is one heading this thing. So then let's move on to Galatians, at least before this thing times out. Galatians chapter 1. We have a strong warning from Paul here, where he says, Galatians 1 verse 6, I marvel that you are so soon removed from him that called you into the grace of Christ unto another gospel. There is obviously no other gospel, but these guys in Jerusalem have created a gospel for themselves. So Paul was actually rebuking these people because of actually going after being deceived so easily. He came and declared the gospel to them, and then now they have so quickly fallen for lies which have come from obviously these Jews who are coming here with a lot of pretensions, yeah, which is not another, but there be some that trouble you and would pervert the gospel of Christ. And this is exactly what was going on in the church in Jerusalem. The gospel of Christ had been perverted. Actually, they were showing like there was a different gospel for Jews and a different gospel for Gentiles. For Jews, you believe and you keep the law and the customs of the Jews. For the Gentiles, you believe and you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, including strangled animals and all that, keeping away from them. So obviously they have double standards right there. Now in Galatians again, if we go to Galatians chapter 2, let me see, chapter 2, we see a place where Paul rebuked Peter. But when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him to the face because he used to be blamed. For before that certain came from James, he did eat with the Gentiles. But when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision. Listen to this, guys. These were people who came from James. He didn't say they came from the council. He didn't say they came from one of the other apostles. They didn't come from Philip. They didn't come from, who are the other disciples? They came from James. And the moment Peter saw them, he realized he couldn't mingle with these guys anymore. He was afraid. He withdrew. And you know, as much as Paul rebuked him, and even I think it was more for the sake of everyone there, so they could know what the truth was and not be deceived, because Barnabas was also carried away with this deception. What is of more concern to me here is that this man came from James, and Peter was so intimidated that he stopped mingling with the Gentiles. He wouldn't eat with them. He withdrew because of fearing them which were of the circumcision. And these who were of the circumcision came from who? They came from James. And James was the one heading the church, teaching that it is about faith and keeping the law. So again, we are still asking the question, James, apostle or apostate? Let's move on to number 3, where we finish this thing off. God bless you.